Hey everyone, we're the Beer Guys, and this month on our Brewer Spotlight, we're checking out Alesong Brewing and Blending, purveyors of fine barrel-aged beers, farmhouse ales, and wine-blended drinks. So hey, we're going to find out the history, how they do what they do, and why they do it. Come check out cool people doing cool things with us here at Alesong Brewing.
And I'm going to go look up purveyor.
Matt, thank you for having us here. Beautiful place. So yeah, just tell us, if you could tell us a little bit about Alesong, how did you get started? Why do you do what you do here?
Yeah, so Alesong Brewing and Blending has been around since 2016. This coming summer will end up being 4 years old. And I've been in the brewing industry since 2001, so I've been at it a while. And I and two partners, Brian and Doug Coombs, got this idea to start a brewery that was focused solely on barrels and aging beer in barrels. And what we do is use the barrels as a fifth ingredient, really. Water, hops, barley, and yeast, and barrels really become another ingredient for us to play with and layer on complex flavors onto beer.
How much experience have you had with barrel-aged beers? I mean, because I know a lot of breweries will have like one or two maybe on the menu. What made you be like, this is what we're going to do?
Yeah, we probably in about 2003, I got a job at a little brew pub in the Chicago suburbs called Flossmoor Station. And the brewer there that I took over for was doing a lot of barrel aging. He was, I think, one of the pioneers in doing barrel aged beer. And we had a pretty good little collection of beers that had won some awards. And so when I came out to Oregon to work for the brewery there, they didn't have a barrel aged program, so I kind of started that and kind of built up some barrels and started playing with that. And we had a pretty big single batch series of stuff. And you're right, many breweries have quite a bit of barrel-aged beer, but it's always a small portion of what they do. It's not their main focus. And part of the reason is that it's very time-consuming, it's very labor-intensive, and it costs a whole lot of money. One bourbon barrel costs about $200.
So, quick question: what aging process do beers generally go through, and what's the benefit, or why would you age them in a barrel?
Yeah, so typically you're going to put a beer in stainless steel fermenter for 2 or 3 weeks. So from brew day all the way through to the time you can sell it to the customer. It could be as low as 2 weeks, but it might be 3 or 4 weeks, somewhere in there, less than a month, let's say, right?
Okay.
When you put it in barrels, it could be in that barrel doing sort of a secondary maturation for 3 months, but that's the short end. Typically, it's more like 8 months to a year, and some beers are in barrels for a year or two.
In terms of what you get from the barrel, you probably get a higher ABV because of longer fermentation, right? And then flavor from the barrel. Is that kind of what's going on?
Yep, you can get more fermentation happening in the barrel, so that'll increase the alcohol. You get a lot of complex flavors depending on if you're in the wild and sour beers or the spirits barrel-aged beers, and there's just more to it. There's more money that goes into making that beer. There's more time that goes into making that beer, and hopefully you get this complexity that you can't always get in some other beers.
Can you get more than one batch out of a single barrel?
Yeah, so we reuse our wine barrels over and over again. What we also do is put beer into these different barrels, and half of that batch after aging in barrels might go into one beer, and half of it could go into something else. And when I show you our cellar in back, you'll kind of see how we can put beer into barrels, but then we see how they mature and do a whole new process of grabbing the beers that taste great together and doing this blending process.
Now, you say brewing and blending and talked about blending beer. We were talking earlier, you blend wine and grapes and all kinds of stuff in with your beer too.
Yep. We use a lot of fruit. In Oregon, we're so blessed to be here in this area where we get just the freshest fruit, some of the best fruit around, and the whole Northwest. So we use a lot of local farmers in that way. It's also great because we're in wine country, and so we can use grapes. And we brew a lot of things in spirits barrels, bourbon barrels, whiskey barrels, gin, rum, tequila. This summer we have a tequila barrel-aged beer coming out, which is going to be great. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Margarita.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
When you were talking earlier, it seemed like the process of choosing barrels and fermentation is pretty complex. Are most of your beers, or do you have a lot of repeatables? Do you have certain beers that we have this, and that. We always brew these, and then there are offshoots from that, or does you kind of just introduce a whole new set of beers seasonally?
We have a little different model where most all of our beers are seasonal or one-offs. Many breweries have flagships where you can always get it, a standby, and that's good and it works. Today's drinkers are a little more fickle, and they are going and trying everything because we have so much variety. And so even the people who do make flagships are having a hard time because people are jumping around, they're promiscuous. And young drinkers too, they've done studies, they're drinking wine, they're drinking cocktails and beer and jumping around. So it's hard to just brew one thing.
Yeah, no, I think this would definitely be more of for those that don't like beer or might not like wine, this is something that can this is not wine, so we're talking about beer. This is something that could get them definitely into the beer world.
Yeah.
Kind of like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, our staff does a great job of telling people, don't think about this as beer. It is beer.
Yeah.
But if you come into it thinking, I'm having a beer, your perception is IPA, porter, stout, whatever. We start with that, but it becomes so much more, and the flavors, like you said, are wine-like, cider-like.
Yeah.
But really what it comes down to, with all the different beers we make, whether it's a farmhouse ale in oak barrels, or a sour fruited beer, or one of our bourbon barrel-aged beers, you want to sit down, maybe on our patio, which is a beautiful view, the countryside, and just enjoy it. So makes life better. Make life slow down. Alesong exists to slow down and make life better. I like that.
I wish I had more to cheers to that. So now let's go check out. Can we go check out what you guys do?
Let me show you around the back. Let's go.
Good.
Welcome to the cellar at Alesong. I'm going to show you around and show you how we make beer, because it's definitely different than some places. So back here in the cellar, we have our wine barrels. We have a couple of little tanks. We have some large format oak barrels. We have some fermenters that are right behind me. What we don't see in our brewery here is a brew house, the mash tun and the kettle. Typically when you take a brewing tour, that's the first thing to start with, unless they talk about the mill and cracking the grain. We don't have that here. We didn't start our brewery with a brew house. So we go to one of our partners and rent the brew house. I go up with the malted barley and with the hops. Block 15 in Corvallis is one brewery we brew beer at, and then Cassie and Eugene is another. We brew the Wort at, Wort being unfermented beer. We make that and then haul it down here in the stainless steel totes. We walked right by those when we came in, those guys right there. We'll haul it to our fermenters, and then we're like any other brewery, we're fermenting these tanks. This one here is a 20-barrel tank. Right behind those two are 60-barrel tanks, and that's where the primary fermentation happens.
So there's beer in this?
There is, yes. That's got malted porter. It's got all the ingredients of a normal beer, yeast, water, hops, and malted barley.
How many gallons?
This is a 20-barrel tank, and a barrel is 31 gallons. So
you do the math.
Yep, it's about 600 and some odd gallons.
Okay. That's what I was going to say.
The ones behind you hold 50 or 60 barrels, and so whatever times 31 that is, that's how many gallons or anything. So we're brewing at some other location. I'm doing the brewing of the wort. We haul it here in a truck, put it in there, and it does its first fermentation. That's like any other brewery. And at that point, we bring it from those tanks into barrels. This is all our wild and sour production in these wine barrels here. You'll notice on the barrels, King Estate is one of the wineries we use because it's next door and we're good friends with them. We have a great partnership. But there's some California barrels here. These are actually gin barrels, those little tiny ones. And we have some other wineries scattered throughout here. But these barrels go all the way back, and we may put them into our large format tanks. These are 20 barrels also, so the amount of beer in this tank would fit into one of these ovals.
Okay. Oh wow.
Then the last thing we could do at this point is go into our spirits barrel. So if it's a rum barrel, tequila barrel, bourbon barrel, and then what we do is we fill those and haul them into town, because you want to keep your non-sour beers separate from your sour beers, because there could be a risk of those getting together and then you have sour stout. That's not what we want to do. So then at this point we wait, use patience, and we let these mature. What we do is we taste them at different times and see how they're maturing, decide what we're going to make, and then it's time for blending in another tank. Actually, we have two choices now. We can either put it into our blending tank for packaging, or we can decide we're going to add a fruit to it, whether it's wine grapes or cherries or something like that. So we'll take them from the barrel and we'll add them to another stainless steel tank. We have a couple in town, we have a couple here, we have a couple outside actually, and then we'll let it age on fruit. And what happens is anytime that you add wine grapes or cherries, that's sugar source. And so another fermentation is gonna happen. That will go down to dry, and then it will be time to package it. And we now package all of our beers in town and bottle them in there. So really, between two facilities, we're moving beer around, we're moving barrels around. We used to bottle right where we're standing, and we've changed that to in town with a new bottling line.
Nice.
So, and I bet you guys would like to see how we sample beer around here.
I mean,
Yes, I've got
That's,
it.
that's something I can show. Yeah. We'll do that. But you gotta let me get the tools real quick. Let me show you what's in a barrel. And we were mentioning putting them in barrels, but what we have to do here is do a lot of testing throughout its maturation process. It's a tough job being a brewer here. But I've got my tools, so what I'm gonna do is show you how I take a sample and then I'll just pour it into your glass so you can see what's going on. But
So you got pliers and a spray bottle?
I got pliers, a spray bottle. I keep things clean here. We're gonna spray that. This little nail here, in our industry, it's called Vinny nail. That's named after Vinny Chilurzo, the owner of Russian River. He may not have been the first one to do it, but he certainly popularized it. But people want to ask, how do you get in here? Well, winemakers have a thief and they go into the bunghole in the top and they pull out a sample of wine. We could do that too, but we want to kind of keep it undisturbed. And so typically what we'll do is we'll sanitize our area there, and then you have beer coming out right here.
So it's like Viking style. Like,
And so this is how we get samples out to taste and see how it's doing, see how it's maturing. Sterilize, sanitize everything. What you have to realize is when you have this type of beer right out of the barrel, so of course it's cellar temperature. This isn't cold. There's no carbonation in this, and it's not finished yet. This one happens to be Pesh. You can see that we've already added peaches to it, and then we put it back in the barrel. This one's actually getting packaged up in about a month, so it's getting there. But it's a beer that you can taste and smell.
No, thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Cheers.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
This lets you really see inside the process of what it's like before it gets to package. So there's quite a bit of acid there. Yep, he got it. He got it down the right pipe. There's some fruity peach flavors there.
Yeah, very peachy.
But we've got some other beers we're going to blend with this for the final thing. So a lot of times, I'll tell you, you guys are really getting the insight here, because when people taste this, they think, oh my God, how do you make such good beers that come out of there when it tastes like this? This isn't bad, but you can tell it's not a finished product.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's
The
going
thing is, like,
somewhere.
it seems like a lot of sour beers and stuff, this would be the finished product.
And that's true. And I'll tell you the exact reason for that. Because many people don't have rows and rows and rows and rows of barrels to pull from to blend exactly what you think tastes good.
Okay.
If you're a small brewery or a big brewery with just a few barrels, what you put in here is what you have to put into the keg, which goes into your customer's glass.
Now,
we have the ability to blend stuff.
I was going to, sorry to interrupt, but to kind of give everybody a frame of reference, what we just tasted was, didn't taste like there was any carbonation, there was no zest or anything like that to it. It was kind of like the base of one of the sours. What happens to finish it? Or
Right.
What will make this the finished
So
product?
one thing that happened to this, many of our beers, base recipes are just that, base recipe that goes into here with a different blend of yeast or bacteria, and then later we'll add stuff to it. This one happened to have peaches already added to it. It was in one of our outdoor tanks with peaches. We then will taste it for how acidic it is, how fruity it is, kind of what we think we want in the end and how it compares to this. And then we'll do a little blending session. We'll say, okay, this one's too sour. Let's go ahead and add some of our non-sour beer to this. Or this one doesn't have as much peach character, so let's add that other older peach beer we have. So we have ways to increase or decrease the peach character, the sourness. So that's kind of what'll happen after this one. It's a crazy process because the beer on brew day is not fully thought out yet because we have so many months of aging and deciding what we want to add. It's typically, this is our painter's palette of what we want to do. And we look at our beers we have in them, we taste them throughout their lifespan, and then we kind of decide what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining me. I hope that made sense. Let's go ahead and up and taste some beers. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Matt, thanks for showing us around the cellar. That was really informative in there. Now let's taste some beer.
Yeah, let's drink some beer. I grabbed 3 things that we could try. As we've talked about, we make a lot of different beers, but there's sort of 3 main categories that we have. And there's like the Brett Saisons, barrel-aged Brett Saisons. They're not sour because we don't put lactobacillus in them. We have the sour and fruited sour beers, and then we have our spirits barrel-aged beers, which encompasses all the spirits. First one we have is Touch of Brett Galaxy, and this is one of our series that we do called Touch of Brett. And this is a Brett Saison aged in French oak barrels. And it's aged for anywhere between 6 months and a year. And then after it's aged and matured in the barrel, we dry hop it with a hop that we think really matches the Brettanomyces sort of aromas and flavors that come out. So cheers.
Touch of Brett.
To Touch of Brett.
It's like an IPA.
It's drier.
It's got bitterness like an IPA, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's dry enough to drink. Yeah, it's like pineapple juice IPA.
Yeah, you can smell the fruitiness probably more than you can taste it.
Brettanomyces, when it ferments, when it's a primary yeast, there's a lot of fruitiness, tropical fruit, pineapple, mango, things like that. Also, this is one that we use the most hops in many of our beers, so it's fun to watch a beer evolve that way.
So I had some cheap champagne on New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
This
I did
is
too.
this is leaps and bounds. This is like what the champagne was trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Because it does have, it's very dry
Yep.
and fruity, so you do kind of get the hint. But this is the taste, the flavor is much more balanced.
It's a great celebration beer for that because you get more than just champagne, right?
Cool.
Wait, you want to try another one?
Yeah.
What the heck? Okay, I'll take it.
Wait a
So
minute.
the second beer that I chose for you guys is our Terroir series, which is the ones we put grapes in, wine grapes. And this one's called Terroir Cabernet Sauvignon. And it has fruit from Alder Ridge, which is in the Horse Heaven Hills AVA. We use a lot of grapes from next door at King Estate. We use a lot from Oregon producers, but we source a lot of grapes these days, and some of them come from Washington or Southern Oregon. Cheers.
Cheers. It's like no surprise. It tastes like carbonated red wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like
That's my take.
how you describe, I don't know if people describe red wine as oaky, but it's more oaky.
Yep.
Like if you gave this to a strictly wine drinker and was like, I'm gonna give you a beer, they'd be like, this is a lot.
Yeah, like this is a beer. This is a beer.
This is the one that would get them in the door.
Yeah,
I think
for
so.
sure. This is one that our staff just loves to be able to give to anyone who says, no thank you, I don't drink beer.
Yeah.
Hand them this and they're like, oh, I like red wine.
Yeah.
And so this beer has a lot of tannin structure, and that's because this one aged on the Cabernet grapes, the crushed grapes, so it's got skin contact. And so some of the tannins you're tasting there, where it's that oakiness, is somewhat from the oak barrel that it was in, but it's also from the grape skin contact. Mm-hmm. So we added those grapes to beer that had matured in the barrel. It did another fermentation, went down to dry, and then we removed it from the skins for a little more maturation and packaged it. All right, guys. So the third beer that I chose for you is one in our Spirits Barrel Age series. It's called Rhino Soup. So the first beer we put into spirits barrels, into bourbon barrels.
So as opposed to the raspberry that we had earlier, this is just the straight.
This is the base straight imperial milk stout, and it's aged in bourbon barrels. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's got the lactose in it, gives you a smooth creaminess. The barrel not only gives you the flavor of the bourbon, but also there's some vanilla flavors that come with it. Like when you taste bourbon, you get vanilla, cinnamon, caramel, maybe even smokiness from some whiskeys.
Now, what got you into it?
It's interesting. That's a really good question. I was on a path to be a doctor when I started going to college. It was a pre-med program. I enjoyed beer, not imperial stouts, but other beer that was less expensive, more, and suddenly needed to change focuses. And I became a science teacher. So I graduated college with an education degree. I was a science teacher for 6 years. In the mid-90s, when I finished that and started teaching, I was touring breweries. I was seeing craft beer come into the Chicago suburbs where I lived, and I was touring breweries, drinking better beer, drinking some imported beer, and then I started homebrewing with a friend, and all these experiences came together to click. Hey, fermentation, beer, that's science. Why didn't someone tell me as I was studying science? That fermentation was the reason. that's a scientific thing. All my biology and chemistry stuff was helping me to enjoy the fermentation process. And so I kind of got into it. And as a teacher, you have summer break off, spring break, winter break, all those things. I went into a brew pub across the street from where my brother worked, and we had lunch at the brew pub. And I asked the brewer if I could help out during my times when I was off, because teachers have some time off. And he said, sure. So I was washing kegs, I was helping him brew beer. It was a really small brew pub, and he didn't really need the help, but he was glad to have free help. And I got some free beer, got some free food at the pub. And after doing that for about 2 years, just off and on when I had time to help him, he said, you want a job? You're working harder than my assistant. And I said, well, I have a career. I'm going to retire when I'm age 55 because that's what teachers can do. So why would I do that? And short story long, my wife and I didn't have kids. We were at a point where we had some money. I could take this pay cut because it was a deep pay cut, even from a teacher. It was a deep pay cut.
That's hardly anything.
To be an assistant brewer, I did it with all intentions of trying it for 2 years, being out of education and just seeing what it was like to brew beer. And that was 2001 when I took the leap and did it. And now it's 2020 and I'm own a brewery, and here I am. So I never went back to it.
So a huge thank you to Alesong and Matt for educating all of us. Appreciate it. If you're interested in coming out, please come out to Eugene. We're out here by King Estate Winery. You'll see a huge sign that says Alesong, and come have some of their beers. It's delicious.
So you can find them in California, Washington, and of course Oregon. And I was excited to find out that they're in Georgia as well. So there are a few different places where you can find their beers.
Hey, so if you're not in any of those states, check out the Tavor app, link below. Be sure to use promo code TheBeerGuys to get $10 off your first purchase. The other way you can find out is by going to alesongbrewing.com. Join their club. You get updated on news, information, new beers that they're coming out with. As you saw, there's a lot that's going on. And you can get beer access that way by joining the Alesong Brewing Club. So thank you, come on out, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share this, let people know about Alesong.
And also, drink responsibly and don't drink and drive.
Amen.
I'm really a dinosaur with this watch on. I need an Apple Watch. I need something sleek, right? I'm like,
No, she's trying to sell it.